What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast. So real quick, before we jump into today's epic, amazing podcast interview, make sure to check us out at gsdmode.com, where you can see previous interviews, as well as a bunch of other free resources that will help you massively grow your real estate business. Also, if you enjoy and find value and see value in the content here at GSD Mode, make sure that you share the show with somebody that you feel can benefit from the content that we are releasing. This show is possible because of all your support, and your support truly means a lot. Now let's jump into today's interview and go have some fun. Peace. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast, where every single week I interview top entrepreneurs, top real estate professionals, and those that are straight up just dominating their spaces. People choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, for their families, as well as have a big impact on others. And today, guys, we've got another badass guest here on the show. So our guest today, guys, is a multi-award winning author. He's authored several books. Multi-award winning author and self-made employee millionaire. So years ago, he got just tired of the uncertainty of living paycheck to paycheck and decided to make a transition and a shift and go out there and create financial wealth and financial freedom for himself, and now has well over 10 years of experience of personally investing in real estate and rental properties himself. So really stoked and honored to have Chammas on the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey Joshua, what's up? Thank you for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure, and I hope we can really add some tips and advice to the audience here on how to build wealth and achieve financial freedom, all the while while they're still in their pay job.
Yep, no, I love it, and I appreciate you jumping on here. I know you and your family live in Dubai, which is 10:30 p.m. late at night. We're about 12-hour time difference. So really appreciate you making this happen, man. This is awesome. And we were just talking before we hit the record button to how, with everything that you do and specialize in and now are teaching others how to build this wealth, I love it for and why one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on the show is for our audience, being real estate agents, not only to go out there and create financial freedom for ourselves, because look, we're in the corporate world, you're living paycheck to paycheck, right? Yeah. Us in the real estate space, we're living commission check to commission check, right? So it's nice having that passive income and building up that wealth, because also in real estate, you're an entrepreneur, so there's no retirement. So if you don't set yourself up, you're in trouble there. But then also being able to teach these methods to our own clients on how to build wealth, it makes, your typical buyer or seller client, instead of being one transaction, right, can go to multiple transactions, and you're able to change their life as well as be able to create more revenue for yourself. So I'm stoked to jump into this. But before we jump into what you're doing today and what your methods are, I'm always intrigued in our guest journeys that led them here in the first place. Like I know there was that uncertainty and paycheck to paycheck, that just the hamster in the wheel grind that so many operate in, which was you. But like, what was going on and what happened, and what was that moment that the transition shift, and then why real estate? Like, what led you to this vehicle in the first place?
Yeah, it's all started for me back in 2008 when there was the worldwide recession, and it was really like a domino effect across the world. Back then, I was living in the Philippines in East Asia, and I was sitting in my office, and I was seeing my colleagues being called to the HR the office, and then having the box and leaving the office. So it was a wake-up call for me. I was in my mid-30s, and I said, oh, what if it ever happens to me? What if I was next? I was hiding my face in my cubicle. I hope, praying not to be called in the HR office. So, and it was a wake-up call for me. Before that date, I never read the book. So ever since, I got my hand on a great book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and it was an eye-opener for me about really the importance of achieving passive income and building wealth and the power of leverage. So now I was lucky enough back then that I met an American guru. He's a real estate guru living in East Asia between China and the Philippines. And I was really after him, really wanted to get coached. And luckily enough for me, he agreed to coach me. So the motivation from Robert Kiyosaki and the know-how from my mentor, Papa Joe, really helped me to really kind of roll my sleeves and really dig deep and dive into this ocean of real estate investing. In the beginning, as any investor, there's a lot of fear. But, when you start investing in your first property and the next, your confidence builds up and then becomes kind of your second nature or autopilot. And here I am, I achieved financial freedom in 7 years back then when I started investing. And I thought, wow, if I could do it, and I'm no one special, I don't have any special ability to do that, why not everybody can do the same? And that's why I wanted to spread the word.
Yeah, no, I love that. And one thing that you said that I think is so powerful of, you got the inspiration from Robert Kiyosaki, but then before you just jumped right in, I mean, so many people will get inspired in real estate and you get in real estate investment, and then they'll just jump on in without learning the process and finding that mentor to really, have that, architect, that blueprint, if you will, on how to go out there and achieve the success. So you really made sure to infuse yourself with the right mentor and really get the knowledge base and the know-how before you jumped in the investment game, which is so important in that, look, there's always a risk element that exists, but the risk really exists when you don't know what you're investing in, when you're investing blindly. And you took the time to really know it, which is huge. But then from there, man, because before that, you're living paycheck to paycheck, so, how do you, I mean, at that point, a lot of people then just kind of dismiss me, especially real estate investing, because the money that's involved with it. So what were some of the first transitions and shifts that you did, with somebody that didn't have a lot of additional, you weren't a high income earner, right? To be able to start, saving the down payments, and kind of walk us through, what was the path to getting that first deal?
Yeah. So in one of my coaching sessions with Papa Joe, he once whispered in my ears and told me, you become at least as rich as the amount of good debt you take in your life. Back then I said, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot of information in there. Let me digest on it. So from this lesson, what he taught me is, if I invest in income producing assets, such as real estate, and I really take good debt to finance those properties, those investments, this will be my road to wealth. So back then, when I started to study income producing assets, what was really amazing discovery for me was a bank is willing to lend you for a property because that's a secure investment. And that's it, and banks like secure investments, and property is a secure investment for them because it can be put as a collateral to secure those loans. Whereas if you want to borrow from the bank to invest in paper assets or in some businesses, there'll be more, higher interest rates or more paperwork or more conditions to finance those deals. Yeah. So, and this is it was one of the first secrets I learned from a mentor, and which I gave them some funny names. I call it the Robert Kiyosaki power of leverage. And it speaks about the power of leverage, It's about really how can you use something or someone to your maximum advantage. And, the thing is, a starting investor like me back then does not need spare cash. The job allows them to borrow what they need to start investing. And as I mentioned, property is a secure investment. And if you have a regular income, a good track record of paying your debt obligations, and a sensible plan to investing what you're borrowing, the banks will be after you to lend you all the money you want to start financing those investments. And this is when, I started investing in one property after the other. And what I've realized is it's like a virtuous circle, whereas the more I invest in properties, the more my total income will increase because of the passive income on top of the earned income. And the more banks will be willing to lend me more and more money, to add to this cycle. And voila, it was adding more passive income and more money coming to me from the banks, and started to build wealth one property at a time.
Yeah, love it. So then, and I'm just kind of going through the, maybe the limiting beliefs that some people have of why they don't get started. Because then they're like, okay, well, I get that the banks will loan me money, but man, I got to have a 20% or 30% down payment or something like that, right? And this is something that isn't talked about a lot. A lot of people talk about, starting at their fourth deal or fifth deal, but just getting that momentum going with that first deal, if they don't have, let's just say, that 20% sitting in the bank, and maybe they don't have, a family member that can lend them the money or whatever. How did that process start? Was it just a straight budgeting and getting to the point and position where you're living way below your means in your personal life to save that up? What would recommendations be there, and what did you personally do for that?
Yeah, indeed. This is one of the most heard of objection of all starting investors. I had the same objection, and now I hear the same objection from all the coaching students on our website. They always tell us, I need money to make money. And we always answer them, indeed, you need money to make money, but who said it has to be your money? What happened to me back then, when I was first starting, and luckily I had my mentor, when I ever did my first financial statement, I was in deep debt, no assets, a lot of liabilities, So what Papa Joe taught me is, I need to leverage my income and start really decrease, to lower my discretionary expenses so that I can save more, because I need to come up with this little money to start investing. And the golden rule is around 20% of your money should be coming for the investment, and you borrow 80% from the loans. But then what I learned even more is that when you start prospecting for properties and you find properties that are below market value, this difference between the market value of the property and what you negotiated for could be in a way you sweat equity. So some banks do allow you to put this kind of discount as part of your sweat equity in the equation. And this is where we try to teach really all the students on our coaching program is, yes, you need some money, but it's not really that amount of money. And we teach them how to find those discounted properties and how to approach a lender in a very transparent way to really give them the money based on the great deal they found.
So with that, if you can find the right deal at the right discount, and let's just say it's at 70% of market value, right? Because it has 30% of equity in there, would the bank then find? So essentially, you're getting the property for no money down, or am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah. So it used to be more prevalent in the past, but after the financial crisis, the credit was tightening more and more from the banks. But it's an option, and we still really are still doing it till now. It's all about the banks having trust in you that you are a reliable investor, you have a good track record, and all the investment that you had are cash flowing, you have passive income, the rent is exceeding both the operational expenses and the financial expenses, which are the mortgage repayments. And when they see you that, yes, you're in control, you're top of your game, they start to believe in you, and then they will consider part of this discount, as part of your payment towards the properties.
Yeah. So but then when you say that as far as they're looking at your track record, right? So that, that first deal or so, you might have to still come up with the income on your own. You talked about cutting out your discretionary income, and man, it's insane how much money that we waste and how much money we can save when you start breaking it down. Like the average person could probably save, put away at least $1 a month, right? Or more. By just doing little things like, having an app on their phone for, coupons at the grocery store. I heard recently that the average person would save $300 a month in their grocery store budgets, right? By just having an app, right? Little things like that where there's a lot of money that we just end up wasting that we can go out there and save. But am I hearing that correct on once you acquire that first deal and then you have the track record, then from there?
Correct. My first deal, I went to the extreme, and thanks to my mentor, I decreased my discretionary expenses for some time to zero, almost zero. So no more overpriced coffees and unnecessary apps and doing all those unnecessary stuff, because I was really bad, like I was in debt, So I had to take those tough measures on myself, lower my discretionary expenses to almost zero. And then over time, the more I started to enjoy passive income, I started to increase or enjoy expanding on those discretionary expenses. So, so my message here is we're not really about not spending at all on discretionary expenses, but it could be a strategy in the beginning to get your finances in order, start investing in your first rental property, and from there you can start slowly spending on the things you would like to have.
Yeah. And Robert Kiyosaki talks about this so much in the Rich Dad Poor Dad series of, yeah, I mean, at some point when you want the nice house or nice car, cool, go out there and buy it. But only when that passive income, you know, that you're making from your assets is able to afford those things. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So, but you got to be willing to be disciplined for some time. And you had that wake up call, that scary moment, thinking, man, I'm going to get laid off. And then what do I do for my family? And, so I guess you got to be in that mental state of just like when you lose weight, right. Or getting in shape, everything takes a certain level of discipline, and a certain level of desire. But it can all be done if that desire is there.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yep. So then, as far as, because at least, and I don't know what the market's like in the different markets that you're buying in, because I know you buy all over. You're not just buying in the city that you live, if I read that correctly. I think a lot of people get caught up in, I've got to buy in my own backyard, right? And there's a lot of markets where there's tough margins, right? To like where I'm at in Phoenix, Arizona. Let's just say I'm going to go invest in a single family attached property. Well, even at the entry level market, it's hard to get those to cash flow, right? But there's other parts of the country. Like I have a buddy of mine in Nebraska. He's acquired 80 properties in the last 12 months with zero down because of, like you talked about, he got a bank he gets them well below at a discount. They finance the equity. And even on some of them, he's got to even finance the repairs because there was enough equity to play in. Right. So if you're willing to open up to different markets, so can you kind of go in that? Because then the next limiting belief might be, well, man, there's just no deals that have enough passive income, positive cash flow coming in, right, in my market. But there's always a good market somewhere to buy it.
Exactly. All those limiting beliefs, we always make them in our own mind. It's always a story of demand and supply, and supply is always there. If supply is not there because of the economy, look at personal reasons. Every day you have a divorce or a death in the family or a partnership, people don't want it anymore. And all those reasons are good, or sometimes a current owner is not able to finance or pay the debt on the mortgage. So all those are good enough reasons for someone to sell for a discounted price. So in the beginning, my recommendation would be really invest in your backyard just to learn the ropes of the trade, to get really hands-on experience, to manage your own property in the beginning, because eventually when you start investing in other cities and other countries, you need to start relying on property management companies. But how can you manage or really look at how well a property management is running your business or managing your properties if you did not do it at the beginning yourself? So that's why I recommend start with your own stuff in your own backyard, do the whole thing, learn the ropes of the trade, and then start expanding and going, really outside of your comfort zone or your boundaries.
So then from there, as far as finding the deals, right? Because you've got what you're going to find on Zillow or what's on the MLS. And then, there's a lot of off-market opportunities. And, what kind of recommendation would you give to people to go out there and find the deals? Like, where are you, is it all MLS stuff, or where are you hunting deals? Is it multiple different layers?
That there's a lot of sources on those deals like the MLS and a lot of other websites and stuff like that. My preference is real estate agents. They are really my partners. They are the first team members on my team, and I always try to do things through them. Because actually, the more a real estate agent trusts you as an investor, and they know you're there for the long term, and it's not only about one investment, the more they look after your interest. So and they're always in the market, and they specialize in certain communities. Because sometimes, as you said, we would like to invest in a community, maybe not near us, because there's a lot of great deals there. And really, real estate agents are on the ground and can find you those great deals. And it's all about finding this great agent that really has the investor mindset, and this is why they would try to really look at agents that can help us with all the criteria we set as investment criteria, and not those agents that want to sell us a house with a nice view on a nice bathroom, or a nice bedroom that will grow your family and make you more intimate. So that's not what we want. We want something real about the numbers, and we want them agents with an investor mindset.
And what's cool about this with our audience that's listening is because they're real estate agents for the most part. when we represent investor clients, right? It's like, man, you're getting so much expertise, from that. And that becomes part of the kind of that mentorship process where you're proving the model where eventually pretty quickly it becomes a point where you become that expert yourself, and hopefully develops that confidence too, that these deals are going to work out, right? So they have such an amazing kind of, leg up on the average person out there wanting to get into this space.
Yeah, indeed. And, as an investor, when we meet agents and they tell us, I'm investing myself in properties, that's an advantage. I can trust such agent much more than those who never invested for themselves, because I can know that they're in the game and they understand the whole process and the whole game.
Yeah. And then when it comes to, and I don't know if you've done any of this, but I've had a lot of investors that have been on the show that have some pretty big portfolios, $50 million plus portfolios. And a lot of them, the majority of them got their start in investor meetup groups, like going to local meetup groups, meeting other investors. And, because it's one of these things where, really, really seasoned professional investors, that have, a high net worth, they don't have time. So they don't have the time to go out there and hunt their deals, right? Where maybe me as an agent that's trying to become an investor, somebody's trying to become an investor, you have the abundance of time, but not the money, right? And you're getting the knowledge base, but then it seems like a lot of partnerships can come from that. I have a friend of mine locally here in Phoenix that has over 40 rental properties that he ended up partnering with an investor that had all the money, funded all the deals. He had to find the deals, roll in his commission, and he manages them, but they're a 50-50 partner on those deals. So he's acquired over 40 rental properties now with zero of his own money. Just I guess his money was the commission rolling in, but just all the legwork, right? So for those that do have that limited mindset or limiting belief, I should say, of not having the money, it's like if you find the deal, the money will be there. So one way, shape, form.
I think money will find the great deals. Find the great deal, and the money will follow. I believe.
Yeah. So have you? What's your thought process on networking groups? Have you ever been involved in any of those kind of meetup groups, or do you feel that's a good place for people to potentially start?
Yeah, personally, I never went to such groups. I never partnered with anyone. Back then, it was off my radar, because back then, for me, when you want a partner, when you need something you want something that you don't have and they have, it could be expertise, it could be money, it could be time, it could be, the thing you're lacking. So back then, when I realized that I could borrow because I was an employee from the bank, I didn't need to partner with anyone, but it's not off my checklist one day to do it. But I've never done it so far.
Yeah. And then where do you, because there's different camps of investors, right? Like some people that love single family detached rentals, some people that won't touch them. They believe in the multi-unit space, which, is gotten really saturated. And really for the first time ever, and this has been going on for some time now, really since the bottom of the last market, but the first time ever, man, we're seeing, huge, organizational buyers like Blackstone, for example, that are swallowing up single family detached rentals, like HUD anymore, HUD foreclosures. They're not even going to market like they used to as a foreclosure REO. They're packaging up their deals and selling these hedge funds. And again, I only know for the States here, but if you look at the rate of new build development versus the rate of human population growth, there's such a big discrepancy there where, from what I've read, it'll take about 30 years for us to catch up with the rate of growth. I mean, there's just more bodies than there are homes and rooftops out there. And that's why, so much of this smart money, these hedge funds are moving into the single family attached space, right? Because they know it's such a smarter play than maybe it was in the past. Do you fall in one of those camps? I mean, is most of your inventory that you personally own single family attached, or is it going to be multi-units, or is it just whatever the great deal is to be had?
Yeah, I specialize in single family units, and this is where I started. I started with 1 bedroom, then another 1 bedroom, then 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Then I went into townhouses and villas. I only own 1 multifamily unit, which is very small, only 20 units. but my preference is single family units. And the reason is, when you invest in single family units, the investment, the financing from the bank is contingent on the person, the investor, not on the deal itself. Whereas when you go to multifamily units, it's all about the property itself, and you need to protect it with an LLC. It becomes more complicated. That's something now, by the way, I'm planning to start investing in. And that's maybe I did not mention earlier. My next step is to invest in the US in multifamily units. And this is where I'm looking at a partnership to invest with those people that are really going into multifamily units. So I'll be the kind of a passive investor for the first time, just to really learn the market in the US. But so far, I love single family units. It's what I breathe in every day. I'm more in control, in this playing field, let's say. But now I want really to go to the next step. For me, it's the next level, and to go really widen my investments.
Yeah, love it. And earlier you said that it took 7 years of investing in rental properties before you reach financial freedom. And the reason I want to talk about this is, we're in this instant gratification society. Everybody wants 6-minute abs. Right, or whatever. But really, man, you got to have some patience to it, right? There is no get rich quick schemes out there. There is no, this stuff does take time, and people need to be prepared so they stick in the game long enough with that preparation, and don't expect, massive success overnight. So you had a plan of 7 years to reach financial freedom. Now, most people, when we put that into context, work in their corporate job for 40 years. To bank retirement. And even then, it's really not financial freedom because they're probably still relying on Social Security and other things. Can you kind of talk about, just the mindset and the preparation so people can play the long game and really know what this takes? When it took you 7 years, how many properties was that to build up to? And, what did that look like? So people just don't think that it is something it isn't per se. And maybe knowing what you know now, you could do it quicker. But again, just so people have that patience as well.
Yeah, and speaking of 7 years, maybe I was lucky enough to have it in 7 years to achieve financial freedom. Maybe for others it could be 10 years. And nobody is saying it's not a long journey, and nobody is saying it's not easy. But we know it's rewarding whenever we achieve our objective of financial freedom, and not being dependent on a boss or on a day job to really put food on our tables. So, and this is what we call in our coaching program the Arnold Schwarzenegger reps. We all know Mr. Schwarzenegger was famous for his quote about repetition, the power of repetition, and he mentioned in one of his quotes that those are the last few reps that gives you the impact on your body shape. And in a similar fashion, when investing in rental properties, you start in one property, you will not feel any richer. You get a few $100 here and there from passive income a month. It will not be a big percentage out of your total income because remember, you're still dependent on your earned income from a job. Then you start adding the next property and the next property, and it takes time and determination, But the beauty about it is once you have a process and you start repeating this process over and over, you will find that in the beginning, you start to grow very slowly, but then will come like a tipping point when you start to see your passive income start to increase at a faster rate and faster rates. Like in my case, was 7 years. Maybe the first 5 years, I never felt any richer, but it was those last 2 years that made all the difference for me. And maybe I was lucky enough because after 7 years, at that time, I was based in Dubai after the Philippines, and the market was picking up quite crazy in a way. And I built a lot of equity. And, in Dubai, there are no capital gain taxes. I sold some of those properties to take advantage of this, irrational market cycle in a way. And, I cashed us a couple of millions of dollars. Then the market crashed again. I reinvested those in more properties, So I was lucky enough to achieve this in 7 years. But I was never going to give up, even if it took me 10 years or more even.
Yeah. And the best investors out there have that high sense of patience. It's like if you study Warren Buffett, and, he talks about this all the time, he's like, man, I'll outweight my competitors. I don't get patient. I don't, I don't get impatient. I don't, right. Like I wait till the deal's right. And to be able to act on that. So I love that you talked about that, and so important, because again, unfortunately, we do live and when I say we live in this instant gratification, I think it's subconscious for a lot of people, because it is like, I bought actually this notebook that I'm taking notes on for our interview. I bought this on Amazon, and in 24 hours I had it on my doorstep, right? We're just, kind of grown up and conditioned now to this.
Got used to such things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's important to have that context.
And Joshua, I think the instant gratification mentality is the biggest risk we create for our own selves. So for example, a lot of my friends, and now in Dubai and also in East Asia, whenever they buy properties, they buy on the promise that this property gonna increase in value in a couple of years because they trusted someone who told them this kind of story. And I was tell them, whoever told you the story, that they have a crystal ball, they can predict the future. And I think in real estate investment, to manage risk, you need to start thinking of what's the worst case scenario. So if you're happy with the worst case scenario, which is getting passive income from the rent, so your rent is exceeding all the property expenses, as worst case scenario, beautiful, go for it. And then everything becomes a plus. If the market cycle goes in your favor and maybe you have capital gains, why not? You can refinance all this increase in equity or sell or whatever, depending on your market and the tax conditions in your market. But my advice is always plan for cash flow and let capital gain be the cherry on the top of the cake.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up. It's so important because dude, so many people do get into it for the equity game, right? But it's like, who cares what the equity's worth? As long as the cash flowing is there, exactly. Over time, the equity will be there anyway. But I am curious with the cash flow that you're receiving, are you redumping that into paying off the back end of that mortgage, or are you utilizing that to go like into a separate account to, buy the next deal? What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah. So now I'm still on an investment mode. I love leverage in the proper way, which is good there to finance all those rental properties. So, for me, what I do is for each property or set of properties, depending on which bank I take from the loans, I have separate accounts. They're all different from my personal account. I never mix them up. And the more, the cash is adding up, because back then I was still an employee. I didn't need all this extra cash coming from the renters. And it was really, as I've mentioned, that the virtuous cycle. I was reinvesting into more and more properties. Now I'm in a situation where, I started to enjoy the passive income because it's really exceeded all my expenses. And for me, the definition of financial freedom is not only when your passive income exceeds your total expenses, the essential and the discretionary. For me, no, I have a slightly different definition. Your passive income should be 30% more on top of your total expenses. And why, you might ask me, why 30%? This 30% is important to keep the ball running, to keep on reinvesting into more properties. And also, if you have any dream or that you want to bring to life, any entrepreneurial initiative, now you can do it. All this excess income can allow you to venture into a business, start something new. And even if it fails, you will not worry a lot because you have this money machine working for you as an ATM in the back end. And you can really start taking some calculated risk here and there.
Yeah, it's Grant Cardone, if you're familiar with him or follow him at all, who's a big investor here in the States. Had him on the show, and in his book, The Millionaire Playbook, he talks about his wealth creation plan, which is he calls it his 40-40-20 rule, which is 40% of your income you set aside for taxes, because at that point you're taxed at the highest level. And then 40% for investments, and then 20% to live off of, right? But when you start looking at that, let's just say you make 400 and some grand a year, right? That's 80 grand a year to live off of or whatever. Maybe it's 360 grand. But most people in that income bracket have that reversed, right? But when you're investing twice as much as you're making, or when you said, you got 30% of all your income that you're reinvesting, it just allows it to compound and compound and compound. And everybody that I've met that's self-made created a lot of wealth. They follow something similar, where it's 10, 20, 30% of their income that they're living off of, and then they have that other 30% or so to go out there and reinvest, after they pay the IRS. they're investing essentially almost twice as much as they're bringing in.
And speaking of tax, by the way, and this is the beauty, like what I always say now, the whole world became like a kind of a big city. So now, so you could ask me, why are you living in Dubai? So the tax system in Dubai is in favor of investors. So actually we pay zero tax, zero income tax on all the investment and stuff like that. So it could be a choice. Wow, why don't I base myself in Dubai, invest in the region here? There's no capital gain tax, no income tax, no all the stuff, and this really helped me accelerate my investment engine. And then I mentioned to you a while ago, now I wanted to go to the US, and I know for the fact that there will be a high taxation there, but all this machine is working for me, and now I can afford to go to sleep and start, taking the tax equation, putting the tax into the equation now.
Yeah, so love it, man. And then as far as just preparation, right? Because so much of our success is in the preparation, and you had this great mentor to help mentor you through this. But when it comes to like just preparation of, and you talked about this earlier, of hoping for the best, planning for the worst. Mm-hmm. When you buy, let's just say you are buying this property that's cash flowing a couple hundred a month. Well, you got to be prepared for, hey, if an AC unit goes out, that could cost you $10,000, or if there's a big repair that happens, or maybe I had in a rental property, my tenants stopped paying rent, so we started the eviction process with them. But what they would do is they would make partial payments here and there. It ended up being a loophole in the local eviction process, where reset it, and it took me almost 7 full months to finally evict them. So it's essentially 7 months with no income on that property, right? Plus paying the mortgage. And that, I mean, I've had that property for a decade, right? And that's only one time that I've had a nasty situation like that. But you got to be prepared for it, right? So when it comes to preparation, just to make sure that they, if something goes wrong, a long vacancy, whatever, that you're not stuck. What kind of reserves and protection should you be prepared for so you don't get yourself in trouble? Don't allow, that one investment property that's helping you build wealth to devastate and you have to foreclose or whatever.
Yeah. So you spoke about, like how to plan for such situation from a maintenance perspective and vacancy perspective. So what I do from a maintenance perspective, I follow a simple rule. So whenever I buy a property and I look at either its age or the last time it was maintained, and I follow a simple rule, which is if it's new or maintained less than 5 years ago, I put aside 5% of the annual rent for maintenance. If it's between 5 to 10 years, I put 10%. If it's 15 years and above, I put 15% of the total rental income aside for any maintenance that can come up. Sometimes you have zero investment in a given year, and a given year you might have a lot of maintenance to do. But when you start having this discipline of putting all this money aside, depending on the age of the property, whenever you need this money to pay for those maintenance, you will have it there ready for you, waiting to be spent in the on maintenance. However, when it comes now on the how to avoid vacancies, I follow my golden rule is attract the right tenant at the right price, at the right rent, and at the right time. So we do really whenever I have tenants coming in. We have a background check, and for me, what I do, I try to check not with the previous landlord, even the previous landlord. So and this is what I really find, because the previous landlord might want to get them out and might speak a lot of good things about them, but the previous one, the one before the previous, will really tell you all the good, the bad, and the ugly about the tenant, and we make it really as mandatory part of the application form when they want to apply for a tenancy. And then what I also do, depending on the market, like in East Asia, I make them pay 2 months security check, but I encash the security checks. It's not like I keep them on the side. I encash those security checks as 2 months, and also I take the last 2 months, so month number 11 and month number 12, I encash them early on in the beginning. So in starting off, In the first month, they will have to pay for 5 months. So 2 months security, 2 months, the last 2 months, and the first month of the rent. So whenever things happen, I already have 4 months of reserve to protect me against those cycles. And what I learned in the process, whenever a tenant really paid all this money in advance, they will respect the agreement. They will respect the property. They will never mess up with the property. They will always make sure that whatever is stipulated in the agreement about what's their part in the maintenance, I always make it, by the way, any minor maintenance, it's the responsibility of the tenant, and any major maintenance is my responsibility as a landlord. So whenever we do all those, checks on the properties, because they paid all this money in advance, we really see them taking good care of the properties. And this really helps us to find, really, as I said, a great tenant at the right time and the right rental income. And so far, the only vacancy I had was 8 weeks. That's the longest vacancy I've ever had in all my entire portfolio.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because you're getting, when you get that money up front, you know that they're fiscally responsible from a financial level. Yeah, right. You're checking credit, you're checking all of those things. But then when you go 3 levels deep with their previous history of with their landlords, right, you're also getting, I'm guessing about 5 years or, 3 to 5 years of a background story of who this person really is. And you're the first person I've heard that's went that deep. And I guess it's a rhyme to the reason of why you're protected and get great tenants. And then I'm guessing you got to also have that discipline of, okay, let's just say it's $1,000 rental. So you got $4,000 coming in up front. You got to be disciplined to, hey man, that money's got to sit in that account.
Of course, definitely.
Whatever, because also you're going to have those last 2 months that revenue isn't coming in, and not touch that. So you got to be disciplined to follow that.
Definitely, and that's why we try to separate accounts, as I mentioned a while ago. So that, because the moment you mix all those accounts with your personal account, it's a recipe for disaster. You will lose control over all those, the cash flow you're having.
Yeah, love it. So then, through all of this, we talk a lot about the successes that we've had or you've had with this. But there's also those, I don't want to call them failures. I like to call them learning moments. Yeah, right. That we have, that we really learn from with that. So what have been some of those, things that maybe you got wrong that ended up being great learning moments that are now assets today, that you'd like to share just to help others hopefully avoid those learning moments?
Yeah, I would share a few. Actually, I like to call them failures, but I like to call it let's celebrate failure, because out of those failures, you learn the most important lessons in your life. So I share a few. So one of the failures I had is, when I was really investing, I started to pile up properties like in every year, like really a dozen properties here and there and stuff like that. Once I got 3 units of 1-bedroom apartments, really door to door from a landlord. And because he was kind of a bit arrogant in a way, although the deal was great, it was really discounted, but I was kind of stubborn. I set the price and I was not willing to go $100 more. And I think I was stupid enough to let go of the deal, because even if I paid a few $100s in there to what he was willing to settle for, in a way, the properties could have cash flows double digit for me. And I think I lost lots of opportunities here. A second mistake I paid is what I call, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And the story about it is, I once bought a townhouse on the Mediterranean Sea. It was beautiful. I got it really at 70% of its market value. So 30% below market value. It's a great deal. And the bank really financed it in full at that time. So almost nothing from my pocket except, the agent's fees and the closing fees and stuff like that, So what happens is I failed to do due diligence. And that was a problem. So, and what happened here, when the fall season came, all the rain started to leak through the roof. And I had to fix it now, because otherwise the tenant will leave the property. So I get quotes from 3 maintenance companies, and I settled for the least expensive one. So they fixed the roof, I paid money, and then what happened, a few weeks later, the roof started to leak again. So I went to the second most expensive one, and I repeated the same mistake twice. I was kind of stupid, I would admit that. And then I had eventually to settle for the third contractor who initially quoted me the most expensive price. And what happened, I paid the price 3 times. And whatever money I saved in the process, so all this 30% saving I had, I almost paid it all from maintenance just because of stupid mistakes. And that's when my mentor, Papa Joe, told me, learn that whenever you pay monkeys, you really get, whenever you pay peanuts, you get monkeys.
Yeah, love it, love it. So then when it comes to the management of these, in the beginning when you have, I don't know, a dozen or so, maybe you're able to manage them yourself. But then you get to a point where it probably becomes impossible or just, too much to take on. What advice would you have about finding the right property manager? Because I've heard from investors with large portfolios of the importance of that and the devastation of having the wrong person with that. So, what tips would you give there?
Yeah, so in my process, because in my case, I'm investing in Asia and Dubai, in Europe, and in several countries across Europe, I need to work with property management companies. So there are 2 types. There are those big property management companies. I wouldn't recommend an investor of my size go to those companies because I'd be no one to them. They will have really much bigger investors that will have multifamily units, and they will really look after their interest and less after my interest. So I go after those. I call them boutique property managers. It's like a boutique hotel, or a boutique agency that can really. They can work very closely with you, have those, what I call them, business reviews. I do a QBR, quarterly business reviews with all those property management companies. We set the KPIs, and they can charge you a bit higher sometimes than those professional ones because they give you much more attention. And in my case, because I'm not across all the cities, they manage the rent for me, they manage the properties, they manage the maintenance, they manage the taxes, they deposit the money in my bank accounts across the different cities, and they follow up on any delayed payments, if any. So, and I think they're worth every penny I pay them. And my criteria when I look for them, I start to tell them, I ask them, show me as a proof of concept, what have you done? What property have you managed? And how do you do that? And what's your process? And how often do you visit? And all this kind of stuff. And when I feel that, yes, I can gel with them, we speak the same language, and we set the KPIs or the criteria for each property in the right way, and I can see them that they're over-delivering even sometimes on their criteria, over-delivering, start to increase the rent slowly, and even sometimes manage the operational expenses of the property and increase the cash flow. Those are the companies that I will keep, and even whenever I get more properties to invest in, I will surely give it to them. So I become more important for them, and they can give me more and more of their time and attention.
Yeah. I mean, I've even talked to some investors that, because of the importance of it, that have even given equity ownership, right, to the property manager. Not necessarily on the cash flow of the rents, but when they sell that property, maybe they make them a 5% equity partner. So then, because they want them vested so heavily, which is what you're doing in another way of, not going to a company has 40,000 units that they're managing for all these different people, but to people where like you're their biggest client. Yeah, right. Where they're fully vested into you, and man, it's so awesome. And then when you talk about those KPIs, do you have is the KPI property based? Is it different everywhere that you invest, or do you have kind of a series of KPIs that you follow for all your investments, regardless of the location that you want the managers to be responsible for?
Yeah, I think the set of KPIs are the same across the different cities, but the numbers do differ because each city has its own rental income, its own cap rate, its own interest rate when you take loans from the banks. So the numbers would differ, but what we look for is the same. It's really like a Bible we follow, but the details and the numbers are really do differ from a city to the other.
Yep, love it. So then, you've authored a couple books on this. In your latest book that you have, the Employee Millionaire, I'm curious of what led you to writing a book. I mean, you're having so much success with your own investments, right? Then to I've never written a book, but I have one of my businesses where my two business partners have co-authored now. They're on their third book together now. And I've seen the time that goes into creating a book. Like, it's not an easy task, right? So what led you to wanting to write the book? Like, what inspired you to do that?
Yeah, it's a kind of a bizarre story in a way. So, for a start, I never planned to be an author. Really, it was never on my list. What happened, whenever my wife and I got the news that we're going to get a newborn baby to the world in 9 months' time, something triggered me to open my laptop and start really writing down all those lessons I learned from Papa Joe, my mentor, and from other books I read, from my mistakes, the mistakes I've done, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to put them, and they were only meant to be notes and lessons to my child. I didn't know their gender back then, so that whenever they start, they're young adults and starting their career, I don't want them to run from paycheck to paycheck, because I was back then in my early 40s. I thought maybe by the time they're young adults, I'm too old, or maybe I will pass away or whatever. I want to give them those instructions, not to do those mistakes. So one time, what happened, one time my wife was reading those. It was not really a manuscript, even more like something from me to my child in a way, very conversational, and that's what made the book kind of sexy. And my wife told me that I'm either selfish or stupid, and I told her why. He told me, you're quite selfish not to share this information with the world. And I was kind of shy, and that's maybe my my personality. I don't want to be in the spotlight and stuff like that. And I told her, maybe you're right. I should not be selfish. So I started to contact some publishing companies, and one of those contacted me, and they told me, we want to help you out, and let's do it. And they started even to revise the manuscript to make it more grammatically fit for a book, especially that English is not my first language even, yeah. So I had the ideas in there, and they did the writing method, let's say, and we launched it, and the book won 4 awards till now, and it's getting good traction. And on the back of the book, we started to build a business, which is the coaching program for employees who want to achieve financial freedom. And what really got us into that, people felt we sincere, because whenever I was writing the book for my own child, a lot of sincerity comes in play here. You want to share everything, you don't want to hide anything actually, and people love this concept. And what they felt is, I'm not a guru for somebody really far above. No, I'm one of the guys. I just left my day job a couple of years ago. I'm still there. I can hold my hand to reach out to them and really give them a pull to become financially free. And I believe this is our niche, what we're focusing. We never plan to be so big. We want to be really this middle ground between being an employee and being eventually a millionaire.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I think you hit the nail on the head of why it's built up so much traction, the popularity of the book. There's a big disconnect. When you see, like, let's just say the Robert Kiyosaki's of the world, who's worth several hundred million, right? Versus the person that's just wanting to get started. There's just, this unrelatable big disconnect where somebody, it's like sometimes when you're learning, it's nice to learn from the person that's only a few steps ahead of you, not, light years ahead of you. And that becomes huge with it. So then with the coaching company, did that happen just out of demand from the book, from people reaching out, that just wanted to, you had your mentor, maybe they're reaching out to you to become a mentor, and you wanted to design some type of a mentorship program. Is that kind of what led to that?
Yeah, actually what led to that, so a lot of, of my acquaintances, friends of friends, stuff like that, whenever they started to read my book, and specifically when I moved to Dubai, I still had a lot of friends in the Philippines, and now across the Dubai and the Middle East region, and then Europe, they started to read the book. And because I know them in the way or the other, either directly or through some friends, they started to ask me questions, and I'm always willing to give time to people to help them out. So I had a lot of people out there without any structured coaching program back then to really have them on their investment. And when I saw the results coming in, they were really motivating me. Why don't you do something like that? Because you're genuine, you're not really like a kind of a robotic, and you really still speak our language. As you mentioned a while ago, you're not far up there that forget where we are now. You had the same background, and everything's still fresh in your mind, and you can really help us to go up there. So really, and then we said, okay, why not? Let's give it a try. So we started a beta group through some of the people who bought the book. We sent them really kind of emails, and we started even the coaching program for free, by the way, in the beginning. So it was a way to help me structure it in the right way. And now we do it through a group coaching program, because I don't have enough time to go one-on-one with so many calls. We structure it in a way, one-to-many, but still they have, it's every 2 weeks, and I give them homeworks and templates and exercises they need to fill up, they need to send to me, and I genuinely read each one of them. So when we are on those calls, I give really advice, sometimes to the person in place without sharing a lot of the secret information that they don't want to share, and sometimes others will learn from a specific person, and that's the beauty of having this group coachings on our program.
Yeah, and I've found, I'm a big believer in having mentors and having coaches, and over the last decade of my life, I haven't went one period, over the last decade without having a coach, and sometimes even multiple. And working with so many, between one-on-one to, consultants coming in to group coaching programs, digital programs, I've found that group is the most powerful method. Yeah, right. And for a lot of the reasons that you just said, man, of other people are asking questions that we don't maybe think to ask of yet, but you're able to not just learn from the information that you're learning from, but learn from their, other people in the group and what they're going through. It just becomes exponentially more powerful, in my opinion. And then the bonus is usually, because it's group, it's at a lesser dollar amount than one-on-one. Exactly.
And by the way, another bonus is I am the one learning the most out of the group. The more I do those group coachings, I think the process makes me a better person. And instead of speaking in technical jargon language, I speak more as if I'm talking to a 5-year-old, really like bits, I make the information quite digestible. And then because, when somebody's starting out, they feel they're overwhelmed. Oh, it's so big. And you need to dissect it down into small, doable, actionable steps that they feel confident to do and start to build their confidence on them.
Yeah. Now, what would you say, because, if I go back to your past experience of before you even started to invest in any properties, you had your mentor, you really started learning, and because some people may be like, oh, well, man, I don't want to read the book or jump into a coaching program because I'm not ready to start investing yet. Yeah, right. But it's like, look, man, you might need a year of education and a year of mentorship before you should even pull that trigger to do it responsibly and do it right. For somebody that has that mindset, what advice would you give there, whether it's your program or somebody else's, but to start getting that advice, and learning that skill set a year or two. So by the time they are ready to start investing, they have the knowledge to really protect themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, inside the book, by the way, before I went into the nitty-gritty details of real estate investing, the first 2 parts actually are about personal finance. So actually the book is divided into 4 parts. Where am I now, which is the current state of your finances? Why am I there? And the why is very important. I think that's the most favorite part of the book. For me, it speaks about all those limiting beliefs we create for our own selves. And most beautifully, it helps how to transform those limiting beliefs into what I call empowering beliefs. So people start to change their mindset. And I think changing somebody's mindset is the longest process. Once your mindset is changed, it becomes easier to learn anything you want to invest in, like real estate or even any other investment they wish. And this takes time, to overcome your own limiting beliefs. It's not an overnight thing. You need to digest all the information. You need to reflect on it. You need to start transforming those limiting beliefs and writing them down. What does it mean to you in your own situation? What are you trying to convince yourself? And what's the deep truth behind those limiting beliefs? And once you acknowledge all of those negative things or limiting things they say, this is when you start the transformation process. So I encourage people, do this before you start learning how to invest. It's really about a mindset change and a transformation of who you become.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, because, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but it's in order to be disciplined, do the things that you had to go through, over those 7 years to create that financial freedom, and still even after the fact, right? Like you're not out there blowing all of this money that you're making, right? Like you're still living way below your means and not playing the keeping up with the Joneses game and, doing all of this stuff. But do you, when you talk about that mental transformation and removing those limiting beliefs, do you think that it's like you've got to really truly believe and be truly convicted that it's possible for you first and get to a sense of conviction before the right actions will follow?
I totally agree with that. And also, I think they need to have a crystal clear vision of what I call their big why. What do they want in life? And I'm not talking about money here. I'm talking about the personal stuff they want in their life. So how do they envision their personal life, their religious life, their health life, the thing they want as where they want to live and stuff like that. And once this is really crystal clear for them, this is very powerful. For me, it acts like a magnet that always wants to attract you for. And that's when you start to change your mindset and you start to transform those limiting beliefs. Because whenever you get weak or you remove your foot on the pedal, this magnet, this big why will still keep on attracting you towards it. So really, I think that's very powerful. And as I mentioned, it's all about the personal things, not the financial things.
Yep. No, love it, man. Because and then too, when you have that preparation before you jump into the game, because once you jump into the game, right, when you see guys like you with the success that you've had now, it looks so amazing and sexy, but they're not seeing behind the scenes. Yeah, right. There's a lot of times I'm sure where, man, things are going nasty and you're going to be, tempted to quit and give up. And, you gotta be willing to, have that persistence to push through those tough times. You gotta, be that relentless, personality, if you will.
Yeah, actually, you made me remember when I was going on my first investment. After the fact, we signed the MOU. With the seller. So on the transfer date, the date I was going to transfer the title in my name, I was chickening out. The chicken little in me was telling me, I was starting kind of a wish, maybe I got an accident just not to go there and stuff like that. So I was really freaking out not to go there. And when I started to really sign on the documents for the transfer, the title, and really hand over those checks, my pen was shaking. Really, I was not, I kid you not about it. But really then, so all those small things will make you sometimes pull out of the game. But when you overcome them and no, I was prepared, I followed the process, I have my big why there, I changed my mindset. And once you do it, you do the whole process once and twice and couple of times, it really becomes a second nature. Actually, it becomes fun to do it. And even sometimes now, what happens in our investment life, whenever my wife sees me, slowing down on the investment, she tells me, "Hey, what's happening with you? Why don't you keep it up? It's fun stuff, And because I never had this dream of becoming a billionaire, or I don't want that. What I've realized, being financially free, having a few millions of equity here and there, is really what I want. And now I'm having fun on the coaching process, on the coaching business and all this stuff. I still invest, but now I'm trying to dedicate more time to my family and to the things I love, because it's not everything about a number, Here comes a number that, okay, so what? You get all this excess of passive income and you can enjoy everything you want, but even if you get much more, it doesn't mean anything, And I think people need also to know when to what's the right balance for them so that they start enjoying the things. Because when you want to achieve financial freedom, one of the big why things was about your personal stuff. So you need the right time also to enjoy your personal things in life as well.
Yeah. Because you can get, if you're not careful, you get on that pursuit. I was having a conversation with some friends recently about this because for the longest time, I was like, man, my financial goal is to be a liquid billionaire before I die. And I was having a conversation, this is a few months ago, and I'm like, I don't know if that is a goal of mine anymore at this point in my life. And when I was asked why, I'm like, I have yet to study a billionaire yet, that's here or past, that didn't have a lot of regrets to get to that level, right? Because you got to become somewhat of a savage to get to that level. Right. And you hear those regrets, whether it's in their biographies or whatever, versus, man, there's a lot of, financial free millionaires out there that are taking care of their families, having life experiences, contributing, where is that balance out there? And I think that's so important. If you're not careful, you end up chasing something that, you end up regretting at the end of the day. And where you started with this though is, hey, creating your why of, what kind of a life do I want to live? Like what's my perfect day? What time do I wake up? How do I feel? What do I do? What's the first thing I do when I wake up? Well, what's the second thing? What's the third thing? And what's the best vehicle to allow me to get to that point? And it may be less than people think, right?
Yep. So even for me, like I was lucky enough to have this mentor because Papa Joe became almost a billionaire, but he told me his regrets because he had to manage so many businesses and so many properties, and it really was a lot of things going with him. He really did not spend time. So his family was in California all the time, and he was living between Philippines and Asia. Can you imagine that? Going to California only a couple of times a year. And then when he got old, and he passed away actually about 2 Christmases back, and I used to talk to him quite often on the phone when I moved to Dubai. He was telling me, HJ, spend time with your family, because the thing he regretted was not giving enough time for his wife, for his kids. His kids became young adults, and actually the amount of time he spent with them could be counted in few weeks or months throughout their life, which is not really healthy. So so it's not really about the money, it's about the quality of life that people want to enjoy.
Yeah, and then if you can, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the contribution piece. Right, like writing the books and doing the coaching. Because look, if you invested the same amount of time that you do in the coaching program and then just growing more assets, you probably make way more money growing more assets, right? But you can get to the point where you're financially free and going on vacations, hanging out with your family. But if you don't have that contribution piece that just makes you feel good about what you're doing, that you're that give back piece, Tony Robbins talks about that very heavily of look, financial wealth without the contribution piece is not success, and
it's empty success.
Yeah, and luckily you were able to find that through this discovery process of writing the book that led to the coaching program. But there may have been a period of time where you didn't have that contribution piece and felt like something was missing. And can you now that you really found that piece, and I can see the excitement just as you're talking that it brings to you in your world, can you talk about the importance of that of making sure that you have, as you're creating this financial freedom, to make sure that you have that contribution piece part of it?
Yeah, I think I look at it in slightly a different way. So my wife and I actually, we read the Bible almost every night. And whenever we start praying, every night, we start with being grateful before asking God for anything. And my wife always reminds me, actually, remember, you need to thank God for everything you got. So what we believe is give and you shall receive, So it's not about contributing later on in your life. No, I believe the early on you contribute to the community, to church, to people around you, the more the path will be open to you. And I've been living like that, and I'm confident that this works. I don't have the science to support it though, but I really believe in that the more you contribute, the more things will come back to you manifold. Now, when speaking of contribution, even I wrote a book called The 4 Stages of Building Wealth, which I'm really giving for free to a lot of people, and would like even to offer for free for the audience here. And my publisher thought I'm out of my mind. They told me that I'm either stupid or something like that, because they told me it might impact the sales of your multi-award winning book, The Employee Millionaire. And I still believe I wanted to contribute. Not everybody could buy a book, so why not to share at least the big why and the mindset changes and the limiting beliefs and the 4 stages about the 4 questions. Where am I now? Why am I there? How do I get there? Where I want to be and how to get there. And I started to talk about all those things offered for free. And then whenever people are ready to start embarking on investing in real estate, they can then either buy my book or any other book on real estate. But this book really is my way to contribute, to everybody out there, to all the employees who want to make a change in their financial situation. So this book, by the way, can be downloaded from my website, and the URL for it is www.employeemillionaire.com / the 4 stages. And 4 could be written as either digit number 4 or FUOR. So irrespective, we manage that whatever is written, they can still get to the desired URL.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate that. And we'll have a link below. So wherever you're watching or listening to this, we'll have a link right below so you guys can click that, make it easy on you, and go there and get a free copy of the book. So that's awesome, man. What's crazy is every successful person that I've met, whether they've been on the podcast or I've met them outside of the podcast, to the rest of the world, because they've achieved a lot of financial wealth, they may look and appear greedy to those that don't know them. But I've yet to ever meet one of them. We're talking about people that are self-made, didn't inherit this, at least. None of them, they all lead from this massive place of contribution, and the money just seems to follow it. Even though those that don't know them, the rest of the world, it might look like greed. But I've had to meet one person, and just like yourself, that is greed. It comes from that place of contribution, and the wealth always just seems to follow that.
Yeah. And contribution is not only about giving money to people. On some people, I receive a lot of those emails or phone calls and stuff like that. Contribution really is about adding value to people's life. And by the way, that's my mission in life, which I wrote about also in my book. The more I feel I'm contributing to adding value to people's life, changing their mindset, helping them find their path, teaching them things, helping to transform their life. This is contribution. Contribution to a community, to your church. How can you help your church and other people? Sometimes contribution to those in need. You can adopt some children here and there in some communities or some countries that are really poor. All of that is contribution. It's not about just throwing money left and right as people think,
Yeah. Well, then the powerful thing about, like with what you're doing of changing people's paradigms and then giving them the skill sets and the knowledge that they need to go out there and create success. It comes down to okay, well, hey, I can give you a fish to eat, or I can teach you to fish for the rest of your life and you'll never go hungry again. Right? So if you look at contribution, it's like the biggest level of contribution you can really make is giving the knowledge and brilliance that others can apply to go out there and create lifelong success for themselves and their own family.
Exactly.
So then I'm curious with, and it maybe sounds like your wife might be a big part of this, which behind every great man is even a greater woman. But good becomes a worst enemy of greatness. So it can be easy to get complacent, to be like, man, things are good. You've got a ton of money coming in, passive money coming in. You can take your foot off the accelerator, just be done. What keeps you moving forward and not settling for good enough, but continuing to improve and grow?
So I believe you mentioned about your partner, your second half. I think the most important thing is to keep them on board of your investment game, because they can either act as a cheerleader or as a detractor. And what I've experienced with a lot of my colleagues and people I was coaching, whenever their other half was on board with them, those people really make it through. And whenever they never shared all this information, maybe not to the detail, but at least as a big picture, with their other half, they always got obstacles from them. So now, luckily for me, that, by the way, my wife was also one of my mentors. So before we got married, she was a financial advisor working as a wealth manager, by the way, for one of the leading banks. And she taught me all the ins and outs about personal finance and about the banking system, how they work, how I can make it work to my advantage to get all the loans I want. So, and then, we started to get more close, and then we got married. And so she was my first even mentor before Papa Joe, by the way. And I was kind of blessed. And when I pray every night, I said, I pray to God that I'm so grateful for having Joyce, my wife, as my partner.
Yeah, so powerful, so amazing. And it's, a question I get constantly from entrepreneurs that of getting their spouse on board. The thing I constantly hear is, man, my spouse doesn't support me. I'm not getting the buy-in because now they're having to maybe work long hours, especially in those startup days, right? But when you talk about involving them and to get them to become that cheerleader, right? For those that maybe don't have them as a cheerleader, the detractors, you said, what advice would you give on getting them to become a cheerleader, right? So you can be on this journey together.
Yeah. So my advice would be, you need to show them the passion that you're having, first of all, because really, when you have passion, it kind of contagious. Your wife, your friends will start to have the same passion. Number one. Two, your partner needs to believe that you're on top of the game. You know what you're talking about. You know what you're going in. You might not need to go into specific things that are not operating income and taxes and stuff. You bore them. You need to really speak about, how I can get passive income, how I can get financing, how it can the rent can increase all the expenses. We can earn passive income. Explain those simple terms for them, and put it into context of what does it mean to your life as a partner, as a couple, as a family. So when they see that, yes, I need to invest more time in the beginning, but hey, when we achieve financial freedom, we can start to have more quality time together. We can travel the world. We can have the things we wanted, and that way, when they're on board and they understand what you're going in, and they see your passion, I believe they will really be always cheerleaders to push you when you're slowing down.
Yep. Love it. So then, as far as the Employee Millionaire book, is that with the link that you just gave for the free download of the 4 Steps book, are you able to get information and purchase the your new book on there as well, or is there a different place to go for those that want to get your newest book that's out?
Yeah, so the Employee Millionaire book is sold on my website, which is www.employeemillionaire.com. That's the main landing page where we have all the information on the book. And it's also available across all online retailers like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and all the others. The advantage of buying it from our website is we tend to give more free stuff, more bonuses, more templates. Sometimes we offer our coaching modules are 2-step. We have a video coaching modules and we have the group coaching modules. The video are pre-recorded, and sometimes we offer to those who buy from our website free modules from our video coaching program, which we don't offer when people will buy it from Amazon or the other retailers.
Okay, cool. Yep. So make sure to go to the website, and we'll have that below as well. And then if those watching and listening want to learn more about your coaching, your actual mentorship coaching program, is that on the website as well, or where's the best place to learn more about that?
No, so this is usually, we don't put it on the website in the beginning because, look, we came up with the book, and as I mentioned earlier, everything is in the book. So practically, if people follow all the instructions in the book, and the book, by the way, comes with exercises, each chapter, each step in the investment process has exercises, has all the templates, all the worksheets. Actually, they do not need to invest or more money on the coaching program. But not everybody learns in the same way. For those who want more than just reading a book and applying the learning, in spite of all the exercises we have, we developed step 2, which is the video coaching program. They can listen. It's like having a coach on demand. Everything is recorded videos with presentation and slideshows and stuff like that. So all the learning now, they can see it as visual, and they can also hear it in audio. And for some people, paying $349 for this is fair enough, and they don't need to embark on this group coaching. But a lot of people also still want this one-on-one attention. They need a coach to really push their limit, and guide them specifically on their own situation, where to go next. And this is where we do this assessment, just to really make sure that they are the right student for the coaching program, and for them also to see that I'm the right coach for them. We need to have this kind of connection. And this is when, after this 1-hour free consultation we decide that, yes, let's pull the trigger and move on with the coaching program.
Love it, man. Love it. That's awesome. So then I'm curious with, everything that you have going on and the model that you've been following of investing in, Asia and Europe and in Dubai and the areas that you're at. But then you talked about coming to the United States, but the investment strategy being different there into the multi-unit game. What's led to that decision of, not replicating more of what you're currently doing and, coming in? I'm sure you're still going to be buying more of what you already own, as well as investing in the U.S. with these bigger, potential partnership deals on these multi-units. But what's led to that? Because that's kind of a big strategy move from any anything different that you've done in the past? And what's led to that?
Yeah, I always receive this question, and which is a lot of people raise their eyebrows even when they see me investing in multiple cities. So whenever I mentioned kind of 3 secrets in my book. The first secret I call the Robert Kiyosaki power of leverage, which we spoke about a while ago. The second secret is what I call the McDonald model, so which is basically about a blueprint, a proven process. It's like McDonald's. Whenever they open any part of the world, you get the same hamburger, you get the same fries, you get the same everything. So this process, what I've realized, because my mentor had all those investment in the States, also across Asia and Europe, and he taught me this process for multi-family units and for single-family units. So when I came up with the process, I wanted to prove to myself that yes, the process is repeatable across different cities. So I started in Asia, Dubai, Spain, UK, across Europe stuff, and then I wanted to prove also that it will also work in the US, because the principles are the same for single and multi-family units. The only difference is the financing. As I mentioned earlier, the financing on a single family is contingent on the investor himself or herself, whereas when it comes to multi-family units, it's contingent on the whole property to be financially viable, and number 2 is moving to multi-family. Given that I'm not now based in the US, I cannot personally get loans from the US over there. So I thought I put myself there with multi-family units, build my credibility with the banks, and then eventually go to what I'm expert in, which is investing in single-family units. I put myself there, my foot there, and then I start replicating the process with single-family units in the US. But I need to step foot over there in a way.
Yeah. So here in the States, single-family is defined as 4 units or less. Anything above 5 is multifamily. Is that the same? And this might sound totally like a naive question, but is that the same globally?
Yes, it's pretty much the same from what I've seen globally so far, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Love it, man. Love it. So then one last question for you here. I know we're going long on time, but knowing everything you know now today, if you could go back and at any point in the past, but let's just say, if it was, during your corporate years before you started this investment journey, but if you could go back and have a conversation with your younger self, knowing everything you know now, and gave yourself 2 pieces of advice that you feel would have just fast forwarded this trajectory to success that you've been on, what would those 2 pieces of advice look like?
Don't be a chicken, just do it and start early on. Because what I've realized, I started on when I was in my mid-30s. If I started early on in my life, I wouldn't have lost too much time, and I would have enjoyed much more quality of time with my family earlier on in my life.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Such powerful words. And I lied to you. I do have one more question. Yeah, right. For those that, because look, at least in, I don't know what the market's done globally. I can just speak to the US, but, we're in the second longest bull market in recorded history. Yeah, right. So really since, the 2008 crash, so really 2012 was when it pretty much bottomed out. And since it's just been, record high real estate prices in most places all throughout the country. So there's a lot of people that maybe want to get into real estate investment and may not have the capital, liquid capital in their bank account, but they have a lot of equity in their own personal homes. Right? Would you recommend, to be able to kind of fast forward with the money they could work with, selling their current home, maybe going to then renting and using that equity, because that's going to be tax-free money if it's, under $500,000 at least. That then they can roll into other investments, or the other option might be pull out a little bit of equity. So then they have that to put down. Are you a fan at all of any strategies like that, or is that a little bit too risky?
Look, I think it depends on the level. So as you mentioned, so if they bought early on and now the market is going up, so they built a lot of equity due to capital gain or appreciation. So the more you pull money out of it, what happens here, you have restructured your loans. So your monthly payment will increase to your current mortgage, correct? So they need to make sure that they will be able to pay this incremental payment on their mortgages before they start investing in other properties. So they need to look at the whole equation. I pulled some of the equity, I invested in a rental property, they follow a process, they do the math. If the passive, so if this property will cash flow for them, so by all means, yes, do it. But if they're gonna pull all this equity to invest on the hope of capital gain, that one day they will get more capital gains from whatever they're buying, irrespective of the cash flow, I think it could be a disaster, as a recipe for disaster. So my answer is it all depends on what you're going to be doing with this money. If you invest it in the right place and you're going to get ROI and what I call wealthy return on investment, by all means do it. But if you're not sure what you're going to be doing, be careful. You might be stepping on fire.
Yeah, love it, love it. Powerful stuff. And those watching and listening, I know, and every podcast for this, but information without implementation is truly just the start of the illusion. Information isn't power. It's taking action on the information that you've learned that allows you to create the power in your life, to create the life that you know you want and deserve. And HA shared so many amazing pieces of advice with you guys today. Take something that you learned today and immediately go out there and take massive action on it so you can go out there and, again, create the life that you know you want and deserve. And below, regardless of where you're at, where you're watching or listening, below will be the links to pick up HA's free book, along with to go check out his newest book, The Employee Millionaire, as well. So as always, truly appreciate you guys for watching, checking out the show, and all of your support. And HJ, man, I know it's late where you are. I know how busy you are, and I truly appreciate you taking the time to be here, man. This has been a lot of fun and a massive honor having you on the show.
Man, thanks for having me on the show. And really, when you're passionate about the topic or the subject, you will give it whatever times, even if you have to stay overnight and have, sleep only a few hours a day, you just do it. You have all this passion and energy to keep on going. And by the way, speaking about implementation, which you just have mentioned, in our circles of friends, we call this kind of, overanalyzing a deal and never doing action. We call it intellectual masturbation. You always fantasize about the deal and you never do the action. So that's another advice. Don't masturbate intellectually about the deal. Just do it, man.
Yeah, love it. Nike got it right with the GSD Mode, right? Love it. All right, you guys. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.